Hi, I am M. Roblin. I am about helping you seek out your potential, awaken to new possibility, zoom up and out from some of those problems that you're facing, get a fresh perspective. Yeah. So let me ask you, how do you behave when you're in a really intense situation, like in a really stressful situation? How do you behave in those kind of situations? And how is that different from your preferred way of behaving or in optimal conditions, how you might behave? I'm thinking about this and I'm asking you this because I found myself in one of those situations today. I was about to go live on an online summit and just faced a myriad of technical challenges. And, we had in the ramp up really troubleshooted for a lot of these problems and it had been super smooth. And then there we were finding so many different challenges. And it wasn't a simple diagnosis like bandwidth problem or whatever. We couldn't really identify what the barrier was. And of course, that was adding to the stress of being about to go live. Listen, I'm not sharing this because I want to talk about the stressful situation. I'm sharing about it because it's so important to understand your go-to behaviors, some of the patterns that you have, and then it gives you a choice if you're clear on what that is to decide if it's serving you or not. So let me go back and share a little bit that it was probably about 12 or 13 years ago. I took part in like an assessment, and that assessment looked at how I behaved in different situations. And one of the things that really jumped out at me was how in normal circumstances, I'm not really that controlling. So this was about the element of control that I actually love, like collaboration and spontaneity and hearing different voices. But then when I get into situations of stress, it's like my control dial goes way up and I become, directive. I kind of stop listening. I even become like really authoritative. And, frankly, at the time, like it really made sense when I saw that I had just never seen such a big contrast across a pretty important variable like control. And when I at the time looked back at key moments in my life, like key moments, I mean, of those high stress situations and how I had behaved, it was like so much of it was making sense. I mean, I remember being a late teen, sitting on a public bus, being at the back of the bus, and this passenger getting on and just stepping onto the bus and just falling like flat face down and starting to go into like seizures and stuff. And it was like, even I'm like the youngest person on the bus. I just went into this, high control. You call 911. You get all the passengers off the bus. This, you help me. And just step by step. And we have to say, like in that situation, that really served the situation well, that kind of high control lever going up. But I can look at other key moments of my life. Like, for example, this one time in college when I had been part of this community where we were really bringing together different voices and we were organizing an event. And I was the lead on that event. So we had this big crowd and we were in an auditorium and we had all these different speakers. And there I was, like sitting in the front row with this printout of the rough timings of how things were going to play out. And I was so like, hurry up, shh, you're 2 minutes over. What are you doing? And I think, first of all, it was just confusing for people because I was so different than how they had experienced me in other moments when we had been planning this event. They're like, who is this person? But second of all, it was just completely counterproductive. The whole event was about like creating space for people to speak and express themselves, and here I was like limiting them in every possible way. So I could see clearly that that didn't really work. But having that reflection, you go out and take an assessment, sure, but you can also just ask people that you know and reflect yourself on how you've behaved in key moments and just start to get clear on how you might shift without judgment, just honesty, getting clear, because then that gives you the power in the moment to decide, is it serving me or is it not? So here we were, I was noticing this like this a desire to control and this becoming more authoritative and putting out demands, but without actually even understanding if those were going to work. It almost felt like I was like throwing darts at a big wall. Like I just I did because I couldn't recognize what the problem was. So it was pretty quick that I was able to recognize that, okay, first of all, this just isn't working to help solve the problem because I don't understand it. But second of all, this is also not the spirit of this summit. So much of the summit is about the same kind of thing that I experienced in that event in college. I mean, it's about creating space. It's about voices being heard. And so it was really in that moment to just notice it, recognize it without judgment, and then just say, take a deep breath. Be okay with things not being totally perfect. Do we have enough to just even go ahead? And we do. And then it became about taking a deep breath, not being attached to having things be perfect based on all the boxes being ticked off on what the ideal situation would be, but instead putting myself out of that stressful situation and coming back to my more optimal way of being. I took a few deep breaths, noticed my heart beating, just took a few more deep breaths. And it's funny because I actually, had sketched out on my paper, because I had been quite directive to some people around me, and I had written down, before I had taken a few deep breaths, I had written down sorry in my notebook, and I was going to show it to them. Like, I really felt sorry. And then after taking a few deep breaths, I actually crossed that out and replaced it with, oh, you can't really see it. I replaced it with thank you, because it's also remembering that when I'm in that frantic state, it's all about me and how I'm showing up. But when I'm present to my preferred way of being, which is about creating space and acknowledging others' contributions, then I'm like, wow, I see people stepping up and doing whatever they can to really make the difference and solve this problem. Yeah. How do you behave differently? How does it serve you? When you notice it isn't, what are some of the things that you can do to get back to another way of operating? Yeah. Welcome to comment. PM me. Thanks.